If you're looking to start an Amazon FBA business, but you're not sure what to sell, or if you already have an FBA business but aren't making any money, then this video is for you. Whether an FBA business succeeds or fails comes down to selling the right product to the right people at the right price. Over the next 45 minutes, I'll show you how to conduct detailed, in-depth product research so you can understand your competition and beat them at their own game. If you're just getting started, that's okay. This video has been designed for complete beginners. For roughly the first 20 minutes, I will talk about some of the underlying concepts behind Amazon FBA. I will explain in detail how to identify the types of products you should and should not sell on Amazon, why it's better to sell high quality products rather than cheap knockoffs, and why you want to avoid selling seasonal products, and much, much more. Once we've covered the basics, I'll show you how to identify potential products using Helium 10, one of the best product research platforms out there. I'll walk you through Helium 10's Magnet tool, Review Insights tool, Profitability Calculator, Black Box tool, and more. Consider the second half of the video as both a tutorial for Helium 10 and a crash course on conducting product research. As always, you'll find the timestamps below. Now, let's get started. Products not to sell. Before I can discuss what you should sell, you need to know what not to sell. Avoiding these rookie mistakes is crucial for your success. First things first, you should never sell low quality or cheap products on Amazon for many reasons. By selling inexpensive items that often arrive damaged or broken, you're going to get a lot of angry customers with a bone to pick. They will leave poor reviews, and customer reviews are a significant factor when Amazon ranks search results. Getting bad reviews is inevitable, but receiving too many, too early, and your Amazon FBA journey will be over before it even begins. Another problem with cheap products is that they're highly competitive. Buying a product for $2 per unit and reselling it for $8 might seem like a way to print money, but the very low barrier to entry means that you'll face stiff competition. And before long, someone will come along willing to sell for $7.50, forcing you to sell for $7.25. And before you know it, you're in a race to the bottom against multiple people and selling for a loss, if you're selling at all. Now, there are more than 1.9 million active sellers on Amazon, and over 3.7 thousand new sellers sign up every single day. We'll talk about more of this in the next section, but you need to sell something that stands out and makes you unique, not cheap junk that is sold by hundreds of your competitors. Now, returning to our race to the bottom, the best way to get ahead of your competition is to pay for ads on Amazon. These will catapult your product to the top of the search queue. Yes, but each time someone clicks on your product, you'll be paying a fee. The average pay per click, or PPC, rate is around $1 per click. And if you're trapped in this downward spiral and have been forced to slash your profit margins, then you will likely end up at a loss from the PPC fees alone. So selling a $5 product for $10 is excellent, but not if you're spending $5 for every single PPC sale. You'll also want to avoid selling seasonal and trendy products at all costs. While it may sound like a great idea to sell some Santa hats at Christmas or the latest viral hoodie you saw on TikTok, you'll be facing stiff competition and worse, very inconsistent demand. For most of the year, nobody will be buying a Santa hat. And within a few weeks, good luck selling yesterday's hoodie. This leads to the biggest issue with inconsistent demand: ballooning storage costs. You'll be stuck paying your regular storage fee as well as an additional long-term storage fee that kicks in after 6 months and rapidly compounds. When I say rapidly, I mean rapidly. After 180 days, the fee is 50 cents per cubic foot. After 1 year, the rate is $6.90 per cubic foot, or 0.15% per unit, whichever is greater. That means you need to pick products that you can sell within half a year at most, and seasonal products just aren't it. Now, you'll also want to avoid selling any copyrighted content or so-called restricted goods. Dealing with copyrighted content requires the explicit permission of the owner, and obtaining that permission will take a significant amount of time and money that you simply won't have to spare. It is a headache that I recommend avoiding, even for experienced and successful sellers. There are several dozen categories of restricted products on Amazon, but I will loosely group them into two classes: hazardous and heavily regulated. Hazardous items include anything flammable or combustible, which includes anything with lithium batteries, so electronics are out. Beyond paying extra for the safe storage, handling, and shipping of hazardous products, you'll also need to jump through several hoops before Amazon allows you to sell them, which will cost you more time and money. Now, highly regulated goods such as CBD oils, medications, supplements, cosmetics, and skin and hair products are simply not worth the hassle. Ensuring that items have been procured, labeled, and stored in accordance with Amazon's stringent guidelines, as well as federal, state, and local laws, is too much of a headache. Pro tip: if there's even the slightest chance that the product you're planning to sell contains copyrighted material or could be a restricted good, do your research before purchasing. Otherwise, you would just be stuck with a bunch of items you can't sell. Though technically a subset of highly regulated goods, I specifically want to tell you, absolutely no food. Beyond the regulatory hurdles, some foods like chocolate can melt if stored in a warehouse during the summer, while others, like frozen meals, require refrigeration. Either way, it isn't worth your time and effort, so find something else. Oh, and don't pick something fragile. I don't mean cheaply made. I mean inherently fragile products like glassware or ceramics. That's another poor idea, since not only will you have to occasionally deal with an angry customer who has received a broken vase, but you'll be paying Amazon to bubble wrap each package. And lastly, avoid selling oversized or heavy items. The storage and shipping fees will eat into your profit margins and significantly limit the amount of inventory you can reasonably store at a given time. And there you have it. As long as you remember what not to sell, you'll avoid some serious headaches and save yourself thousands of dollars in the future. And now that you know what not to sell, let's take a look at what you should sell. Products to sell. Now, this might sound like common sense, but the first thing you absolutely need to consider when picking a product to sell is your potential profit margin. While everyone knows profit is important, you would be surprised at how few people actually take the time to do the math before they start selling. And that is a rookie mistake. Always calculate the price you'll need to sell at to make a healthy, sustainable profit. How do I do that, you may ask? Well, you have to calculate your landed costs, which is all the money you will spend from procuring the product until it arrives at your customer's door. This includes the potential import or export duties and taxes, shipping and handling, and all your FBA fees, including storage, selling, pick and pack, returns processing, removal and disposal, and liquidation fees. While many of these fees are pretty affordable, they can quickly add up, especially at the beginning, before you're making money. So you need to plan accordingly. To help lower these fees per item as much as possible, it makes sense to try to look for items that are lightweight, small, durable, and easy to handle. Of course, it'll be rare to find an item that checks all of these boxes, but these should be a few things you keep in mind when searching for products to sell. Now, if that sounds like a lot, well, that's because it is. But there are helpful FBA calculators available, including the one from Helium 10, which I'll be covering later in the video, so make sure to stick around until the end. Alright, so with all of that added up, you'll be able to calculate your profit margin. While many articles and videos suggest that your profit margin needs to be 30% or above, that's not the case. Not at all. It's an admirable goal to have, but when starting out, it's best to keep your expectations more realistic. To be honest, aiming for something like 15 to 20% is a good benchmark, and anything above 10% should be fairly sustainable. There is no magic figure here that you should be aiming for. For instance, having a 50% profit margin on a $50 item doesn't matter if you only sell 5 each month. This is completely unsustainable, as the warehousing fees will quickly eat you alive. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, if you're selling for $25 and your landed costs are $23, but you're selling 2,000 of them a month, then you're still making $4,000 a month on that one product alone, even if your profit margin is technically only 8%. Your margin will vary, and that's okay. It just needs to be sustainable for you and your business. So along with a healthy profit margin, your product will also need to solve a problem or fill a specific niche. When people search for something on Amazon, it's because they needed to solve a particular problem. So when looking at potential products, ask yourself, does this item actually solve a problem? Would I use this to do something regularly? If you answer no to either of those questions, then the market or niche for that item may be too small. So in other words, the niche can be so large that it is oversaturated and you struggle to compete, but it also can't be too small because that means there are not enough customers looking for the product. I know that's something out of a catch-22, but that's just the reality of FBA. It is all about weighing the potential pros and cons of each product against one another. Although the method and factors may remain the same, the math is constantly changing. Now, let's say you've identified your particular niche. What should you sell? In my opinion, a great way to capture a niche is by offering a premium, high-quality product that people will actually want to buy over a cheaper, inferior one. What do I mean by that? Well, let's search Amazon for pop-up toasters as an example. Here's a screenshot I'll use as an illustration. Go ahead and ignore the middle item. It's far too expensive for what we're trying to do. Instead, focus on the first and third options. Is price the determining factor for most people who need to pick between the two? Maybe, but it's clearly not the only factor at play. When we decide whether or not to buy something, we consider factors beyond just the price, such as the value it'll provide, the use we expect to get out of it, and the quality of its manufacturing. That's why people might be willing to pay $48.95 for a toaster instead of $24.99. Perhaps it has more features, or people think it'll last 10 years instead of 5. Here's a key takeaway. Value should always be more important than price, but you'll need to set a price at some point. So, what price should you set? While that depends, you should only sell products between $25 and $70, as this represents a compromise between cost, quality, and margin. You'll be able to offer a quality product at a healthy margin, but one that isn't so expensive that it pushes potential customers away. Something else to consider when selecting a product. Choose a niche that a few major brands don't dominate. For example, if you're trying to sell sweatpants, then you're going to be competing against giants like Adidas, Champion, Under Armour, and Nike. It'll be almost impossible to compete with them when they can undercut you at every turn. There's simply no room for a small seller to squeeze into the market. The key is to find a product in a niche that isn't dominated by just a couple of players. That's easier said than done, of course, but it's something we'll cover in greater detail using Helium 10. The last thing to consider from this zoomed out perspective when choosing a product to sell is the price disparity. Consider the following example. Let's search for black hoodies on Amazon. Looking at the first two rows, we have a high of $57.99 and a low of $10.29. This is a significant price disparity, and the wide margin between the highest and lowest sellers opens up several different price points you could target. Put differently, value is an important factor for buyers to consider. Let's try another search like all-weather boots. Looking at the first two rows again, we have a high of $64.99 and a low of $34.25. There is still room for another seller to enter the market, but the price disparity isn't as wide as in our previous example. This means that price will likely be a more significant factor for consumers than in the last example, but value still plays a role. Let's end with one last example so I can show you a situation you have to avoid. Searching for Ziploc gallon size bags, you have a scenario where the disparity, except for one product, is barely $2. While you can say that the bag count varies significantly, this is far more a matter of price than of value. And since you want to prioritize high quality products, this is the last market you should try to get into. All right, let's take a step back and take stock. So far, we've primarily discussed conceptual approaches to determining what to sell on Amazon. Now, let's shift gears a little, and before I walk you through an example, let's take a look at one more thing you'll want to keep in mind when searching for the perfect products. Keywords and SEO. This is likely a familiar concept to anyone who has experience running a personal or business website. But keywords and search engine optimization, SEO, are critical yet often overlooked components of a successful Amazon store. So, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, keywords are terms people commonly type into search engines like Google, YouTube, or Bing. The more higher quality keywords you have on a particular page, the higher that page will appear in search engine results. Amazon is also a search engine, and keywords play a vital role in determining whether a potential customer will see your products. Let's consider this from the buyer's perspective rather than the seller's. If you're looking to buy a cooking pot, for instance, how would you search for it on Amazon? Maybe you'd search by material, such as stainless steel, copper, aluminium, cast iron, or even stoneware. Or perhaps you'd prefer to search by color if you're looking for a specific aesthetic. Possibly you're interested in particular features, such as thick bottom or non-stick. You get the idea. There are many different ways people search for something they want to buy. At this point, you might reasonably be asking, how do I know what keywords my competitors are using? Well, you're in luck. There are dozens of keyword research apps available, including Helium 10's Cerebro, that can help you identify the best keywords for your products. Now, another thing to consider is the number of keywords that can be used to describe a product. While there might be quite a few keywords for cooking pots, there aren't very many ways to describe pet food, for example. The more keywords you can use, the wider a net you can cast to pull in potential customers. There's also much more to Amazon SEO, such as optimizing product titles and descriptions, and ensuring you include ample high-quality photos and videos of your product from different angles. However, that's a topic for another time. All right, I know I've thrown a lot of information at you in the last 20 minutes or so let's do a quick recap before we move on. You do not want to sell products that are cheap because they are a reputational risk and have a low barrier to entry, which often leads to a race to the bottom where sellers compete for scraps. This, in turn, makes cheap products unsustainable from a PPC advertising perspective. You'll also want to avoid seasonal or trendy products due to their inconsistent demand and high storage fees. You will also want to avoid products that contain copyrighted material and so-called restricted products, which I divided into two categories: hazardous and heavily regulated. Dealing with restricted products will increase your FBA fees, make you worry about compliance with local, state, and federal laws, and requires you to spend time and money jumping through all the hoops to get listed. The last types of products to avoid include fragile items like glassware and ceramics, as well as oversized or heavy products like furniture or large appliances. You do want to sell products that give you a healthy profit margin. This will vary greatly, but aim for 15% as a target. To help your bottom line, I recommend sourcing products that are lightweight, small, durable, and easy to handle. To find success, your product also needs to solve a problem. Ask yourself, does this item actually solve a problem? Would I use this to do something on a regular basis? Be truthful. I also recommend selling premium, high-quality products. Do not challenge your competitors solely on price. Instead, prioritize the value your products will bring to potential customers. You will also want to focus on markets with low brand dominance. You will never beat giant corporations like Adidas, Nike, Skechers, or LG at their own game. So don't try to. Instead, find your niche and capture as much of the market as you can. Capturing as much of the market as possible also means picking a niche with a high price disparity. I mentioned this just a few sentences ago, but it bears repeating. Do not challenge your competitors solely on price. Instead, keep your focus on the value your product brings to potential customers. Last but not least, don't forget to think about keywords. Conduct keyword research to see what is working for your competitors and to identify potential gaps. Okay, with that refresher out of the way, I'll now walk you through the strategies and tools I use to find products that fit these criteria. Before that though, let me introduce you to the tool we will be using, Helium 10. Getting started with Helium 10. The first thing you'll want to do is sign up for an account because using Helium 10 is going to save you tons of time searching for products to sell. In the description below this video, you'll find a link to the best deal that Helium 10 has to offer. Creating an account is easy. Simply click on sign up for free in the upper right hand corner of your screen. Enter your name and email address and create a password. You'll then have 4 quick questions to answer, allowing Helium 10 to customize your experience. After that, you'll arrive at the dashboard. Now, rather than giving you an exhaustive walkthrough of the dashboard or breaking down the differences between Helium 10's paid plans, I'm only going to say 2 things before jumping right in. The first is that Helium 10 does have a free plan that allows you to test out many of the tools I'll be using in this video, but you won't be able to get the most out of them without a subscription. The second is that my account is currently utilizing Helium 10's most expensive plan, the Diamond option, which costs $229 per month. All the tools I'll be using in this video, however, are included in the Platinum plan for $79 a month. Alright, let's get into it. In the upper left corner of the dashboard, click Tools and you'll see a list of all the different tools that Helium 10 has to offer. To get started, let's open the black box. The black box. Now, the black box is arguably the most beginner-friendly product research tool on Helium 10. Think of it like a big filter that enables you to identify products that fit the criteria covered in the first half of this video. So let's keep those in the back of your mind as we get started. By default, the black box is set to simple here on the right. Make sure to change this to advanced, like that. Alright, we've got far more to work with, which means we can better tailor our search. The first step is to select a category or subcategory of products we want to sell. I recommend choosing between 3 and 5 categories, as that'll give you enough options without overwhelming you. So, remember our talking points. We want to avoid any copyrighted or restricted items. Scrolling through the list, you'll see quite a few categories that you will simply want to avoid. For me, I'll go with home and kitchen, kitchen and dining, and patio, lawn, and garden. Let's refine our search further. As you'll quickly find out, your best bet is to fill out as many filters as you can while being as specific and detailed as possible. You won't fill out every filter, and that's okay, but if you can, you should. For example, the next filter, review count, isn't a perfect gauge of anything, but it can provide a vague identification of an item's popularity and market size. Let's go with 200 for the minimum and 1,500 for the maximum. That's a good range because we likely won't be able to break into a market if a product has tens of thousands of reviews. And if it has only a few dozen, then there may not be a market to speak of. The review rating setting is a crucial one because it makes no sense to try to sell a deeply unpopular product unless you're willing to invest the time, money, and effort to improve it. However, you also probably won't be able to enter a market if the current sellers have a 4.8 review rating with thousands of reviews, right? If their customers are that satisfied, what's your angle? With that in mind, I'll set the minimum acceptable rating to 2.5 and the maximum to 4.5. I'm not going to worry about the bestseller rank or BSR, but listing age is super important. Remember how you should always avoid seasonal or trendy products? Well, one way to do this is to set the listing age to at least 6 months. This should help you avoid seasonal products, but it's always a good idea to double check. Let's move to shipping size. Remember, this is going to be about more than just shipping. For example, if you decide to include any of the extra large shipping options, keep in mind that you will have to pay to store it in an Amazon warehouse. That doesn't mean it can be profitable, but it does add another layer of risk and uncertainty to your overall calculation. For this, I will only consider the small and large standard size options to keep my overall costs as low as possible. A quick Google search let me know that a large standard size box can hold anything from a few ounces to 20 pounds. With that in mind, I'll limit myself to 5 pounds, so I'll use 0.00 as my minimum and 5.00 as my maximum. Under fulfillment, make sure to select FBA. This is where the filter becomes more complex and nuanced, so I'll skip the bottom quadrant for the sake of time. However, I recommend filling this out to the best of your ability when you're searching for products. For example, a good way to make your product stand out is to have a dozen varied, high-quality photos or videos of your product. If your competitor has only 3 stock photos compared to your dozen, Amazon's algorithm will more likely to promote your product over theirs. The point I'm trying to make is that everything adds up, so pay attention to all parts of the whole and provide as much detail as you can. Moving to competitors, we don't want there to be too many sellers because that'll make it hard to stand out and may indicate the market is oversaturated. However, we also don't want a market with only 1 or 2 sellers because, well, that isn't a market. I'll go with a minimum of 10 sellers and a maximum of 50. That's all I'm going to fill out in this section, so we can talk about sales next. Earlier in the video, I recommended using a price range of between $25 and $70, so I will stick with that here. Now, you might be asking what parent level revenue means. Well, let's hover over the I and see what it says. Estimated revenue of all child ASINs under this parent over the past 30 days. Right, that's not very helpful either. So let me explain how Amazon categorizes products. Every product sold on Amazon is assigned an Amazon Standard Identification Number, an ASIN. The ASIN that represents that product in all its variations is the parent ASIN. In contrast, all variations of that product, such as different colors, sizes, or shapes, are given child ASINs. In other words, parent level revenue is a jargony way to say the total amount of revenue generated by a single product over the last 30 days. While you may want to increase this range later, I will start with a minimum parent revenue of $1,000 and a maximum of $20,000. Taken together, all these data points should help us identify products that are high quality, small and lightweight, relatively inexpensive to procure, store, and ship on a per unit basis, well liked by customers, and in a medium-sized market. Of course, your priorities may differ, and probably should, but this is what I'm going with for my search. Note that you can save a filter as a preset, so you don't have to fill out the form every time you want to research a new product, which will save you hours in the future. All right, let's hit search. And we have a list of just over 200 products. As you can see, you can sort by any of these metrics, so I'll choose to start by last year's sales to view the product with the highest volume. All right, we'll want to stay away from the first product because being a DC superhero advent calendar, we'd have to deal with copyright issues, not to mention it is seasonal. Let's take a look at the second item, the 2-pack of can openers. Over the last year, there have been more than 12,000 sales, and it's relatively cheap at $28.79. Let's go ahead and click on the image on the left. That'll open an Amazon page where we can take a closer look. The images look decent, but there's certainly room for improvements. You'll see that the title does a pretty good job of hitting the relevant keywords, including the brand name, noting it is a bundle, that it's heavy duty, not heavy duty with a hyphen, because even though that's grammatically correct, nobody will type that into a search bar. They're also highlighting the anti-slip grip. If you scroll down a little bit and start reading the description, you'll also see that it is chock full of potential keywords. But are these the best ones? Well, let's find out. Keep this page open for now, and let's head back to the dashboard to test the 3 tools that'll help us figure out the best potential keywords for this product: Cerebro, Magnet, and X-Ray. Cerebro. All right, bring up the tools menu and click on Cerebro, which has the description reverse product lookup. In short, Cerebro will tell us how and why people find a product by seeing the searches they use. Remember the ASIN number we talked about in the last section? That's how Cerebro looks up products. So I'll head back to the tab with my can openers. All right, so the ASIN number will usually be buried towards the bottom of the page under the heading Product Information. Scrolling down the page, I'll eventually find what I'm looking for, and towards the bottom of the list is the ASIN. Go ahead and copy and paste that into Cerebro. Then click Get Keywords. It'll take a few seconds to pull our data, and there we go. Go ahead and click on Hide Filters here because until you're conducting really advanced keyword research, it will just overcomplicate things and get in your way. Okay, so now we're seeing a ton of different keywords, over 1.7 thousand for this product. Like with the black box, you can sort by any metric at the top, but I recommend sorting by Cerebro IQ score. Basically, the higher the score, the fewer competitors there are for a highly searched term. Now, some, perhaps even most of these keywords are going to be either brand names or unrelated to our specific products, and that's okay. You'll have to put in the work, but let's take a look here. All right, so it took about 30 seconds of scanning, and I found 2 good keywords that my competitor is not using: can opener smooth edge and can opener for seniors. Once you found a usable keyword, start factoring in other metrics. For example, the first visible column indicates that these two keywords alone generated over 1,000 sales in the last 30 days. You can also see how often these searches are used, the 30-day trend of that search, as well as the suggested PPC bid. It seems we have a lot of competitors using these keywords, so maybe these aren't the best, but perhaps they'll still work. It'll take much more research to answer that question, but hopefully you've got an idea of how to use Cerebro. Let's head back to the dashboard and give its counterpart tool, Magnet, a try. Magnet. You know the drill. Go to Tools and this time open Magnet. So Cerebro helps us identify keywords that were underrepresented but still frequently used by customers to find products. Magnet complements Cerebro by helping you figure out keywords related to the ones identified with Cerebro. If that sounds confusing, it isn't. Let me demonstrate. I'll go ahead and enter can opener for seniors into the search bar and click get keywords. It'll take a couple of seconds to fetch the info. Alright, now you're going to want to sort by Magnet IQ score, just as we did with Cerebro's IQ score. In short, a higher number indicates more frequent keyword searches and comparatively few competitors contesting for that word. So the top results are all ASIN numbers and brand names. Like Cerebro, you'll need to invest time in finding keywords that are both relevant to the product you're trying to sell and underused by potential competitors. Scrolling down, I found jar openers top rated for seniors. This keyword has generated over 1.3 thousand sales in the past month in more than 21,000 searches, which is actually a remarkably high conversion rate. Well, it makes sense since data tends to show that older generations tend to conduct less research and browse fewer options when making an online purchase. Let's scroll back up to the top of that page, and you'll notice that we can click Show Filters if we want to refine our search even further. For example, let's say I'm only interested in keywords that generate at least 250 sales per month with a search volume of at least 2,500. Let's also say that I don't want there to be more than 100 competing products, so I'll add that in over here. Alright, I currently have over 4.8 thousand keywords, so let's see what this search cuts it down to. When you're all set, click Apply Filters and let it sort through the data. There we go. That trimmed it down to 30 keywords. That's all I'm going to do with Magnet for this video, but like with Cerebro, you should have a pretty good idea of how to conduct your own keyword research. Okay, let's head back to the dashboard and take a look at X-Ray. X-Ray and Amazon extension. So, X-Ray isn't another Helium 10 tool. Instead, it's part of their browser extension. Let's get that installed so you can easily check product information right on Amazon. Click on Install the Chrome extension, Add to Chrome, and confirm by selecting Add Extension. That'll bring up this window that we can go ahead and close. You'll want to reopen your product page, so I'll pull up my can openers and refresh the page. Alright, cool. Now, let's open the whole panel by clicking on Show Full Details. There's a lot of data here, and I won't be going into all, but you can see the average sales, the trend line, and the 7-day moving average. It looks like the seller has been struggling for the past 2 months. To be fair, maybe that's just a fluke, so let's change the chart from last 3 months to last year. Interesting, so the trend line is actually positive because the product peaked just a few months ago. I wonder if they were running an ad campaign, or maybe their SEO took a hit. Perhaps a new competitor entered the market, or maybe it's just random. Still, I wanted to show you the X-Ray keyword feature, not just the Amazon extension. Click on See All Keywords right here, and that'll bring up this menu. While the data will be far less comprehensive than in Helium itself, it is still an excellent way to understand the product at a glance. Alright, that's enough about keywords, but we're actually going to stay right here in the Amazon extension because I want to show you its built-in profitability calculator. Profitability Calculator. To open the Profitability Calculator, you're going to want to click on Estimate Net Margin, right here on the left. These are estimates, but you can review the product specifications, manufacturing costs, and fulfillment costs. Of course, you can play with the numbers and see what you can come up with. For example, let's say it only costs me $4.99 to manufacture the product. I'll enter that in for the manufacturing costs and say it'll be in the warehouse for 5 months. That will automatically calculate the margin I'd make, which you can see can actually vary quite a lot during the holiday season. So that's always something you want to keep in mind. Now, before I go, I want to show you one last feature of the web extension, the Review Insights feature. Review Insights. Taking a close look at the reviews is always incredibly helpful because it allows you to quickly identify what the product does well and, more importantly, what it does poorly. Click on Analyze Reviews and give it around 10 seconds to load. Wow, 29% of all the reviews for my can opener are 1-star reviews. Let's expand the Filter and Top Phrases window on the left to take a closer look. As I mentioned, it can be helpful to consider both the positive and negative reviews, but for the sake of this video, I will focus on 1-star reviews. Under Filter, let's expand the All Ratings and All Variations sections. First things first, make sure you select the correct variations. The products are listed by ASIN, so this really comes down to whether you're interested in seeing what people have to say about parent and child products. For this video, I'll keep that as is. What I do want to do, however, is view only 1-star reviews. So I'll uncheck all ratings, select 1-star only, and click Apply Filters. Okay, let's take a look. It looks like quality control is the issue, with many customers saying it broke after opening a few cans or within a week. It also seems that the teeth of the can opener might be a problem. A couple of reviewers report that it struggles to grip and tear the lid properly. Again, this is another potential area for improvements. Now, unless you have the money to get involved in the production process, you might decide to stay away from this particular can opener. That's okay. This is a great opportunity to counter one of the most common myths about product research, that you're wasting your time researching a product you don't ultimately try to sell. You're not. You have learned about the weaknesses of a potential competitor and where you can gain an edge. If people are complaining about the quality, it may make sense to source a pricier, heavy-duty can opener from a provider with more advanced manufacturing techniques and rigorous quality control. That can opener will cost more, sure, but if you can solve the problems many of those customers were having, then you have a shot at becoming a real competitor and carving out a slice of the market for yourself. And when you have completed your product research and found a product you want to sell, Helium 10 can help with that too. Back on the dashboard, open the Tools drop-down menu quickly, and you'll see that there are tons of different tools to help you optimize your Amazon lists, track and analyze your success, and manage your operations when you're up and running. All right, I hope this video was helpful for you, and if you think that Helium 10 might be right for you, then make sure to check out the description below this video, where you'll find a link to the best deal that Helium 10 has to offer. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.